welcome back to another famous episode of the CFT Fitcast. Today, we are here to talk to you about mobility, stretching, staying safe and limber. Don't be tight like me. You know, getting in the car can even cause an injury.
Or like Chris Minton, you can't even put your seatbelt on.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, my shoulder I used to not actually be able to touch my left shoulder to my head and point straight up in the air because I had such terrible mobility in my left shoulder from dislocating it, and it never was able to be put all the way back in the socket. And then, all the scar tissue and just the lack of stretching over the years just got worse and worse to the point where it was really, really bad.
Yeah, I think people, they realize once the pain goes away, they think they're okay.
Yeah.
And then they're good off that.
Yep.
Couldn't be more wrong.
Guilty.
Happens. Or you just train so hard like Chris Minton. And you're just mobile enough. Was that him? No. You're just mobile enough, but you can't put your seatbelt on. He actually asked me for help. I was sitting behind him. He was like, Matt, can you hand me my seatbelt? Looked at him with a dumbfounded look and said, hell no. Get your own seatbelt.
Was that when we went to that thing in San Jose?
Yeah. No, we went to... Yep, it was. I thought it was the football party, but it was the other
That was so
event.
good. Oh, that was a good day. Yeah, I hurt my hip flexor getting in the car because it was like an awkward height. And I don't know what happened. I think I'd slipped or something and just tweaked my hip
Slipped on
flexor.
what?
And I'm like, this is the life I lead now, not doing RomWOD every day. But I've always been notoriously tight.
I'm more of a mobility WOD guy.
RomWOD's great for me. 15, 20 minutes a day opens me up. Makes me feel
K-Star is
good.
10 minutes a day.
And I don't have
Shouts
to
out to K-Star.
Yeah, you know what? Hey, I got no problem with K-Star. I have the book. I have Supple Leopard. I've read it. Actually, his predecessor, what's his name? Dr. the one
Roop Shihoda?
Yeah, Roop. Dr. Roop.
Sorry, Roop. I just probably murdered your last name.
Yeah,
Dr. Roop.
Dr. Roop is the one that cured my shoulder. Took an hour
Good
with
guy.
me and, turned that frown upside down. I was actually able to move my shoulder again, snatch properly, and not look like a jerk when I snatch. That was great. I could overhead squat with no pain.
Roop actually used to be an engineer, for those that don't know.
Yeah, the man's a genius. Whatever he does, just listen. Don't argue. You don't know more than him, I guarantee it.
Nope. Just do as he says. I think Chris used to work with him too, and then kind of just took his information and threw it to the wayside.
I still use a lot of his stretches in class. So I'll still... I take a lot of the stretches that he taught me for my shoulders when we're doing anything snatch-wise, or if anybody tells me that they're tight, and I'll show them a lot of the different stretches that he showed me, some of the stuff that we did with a double lacrosse ball.
The peanut?
Yeah, the peanut.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. That's a good term for it. So
Cheap and effective tool.
Absolutely. Extremely painful if you have tightness.
It's temporary.
Oh, Lord. It's temporary pain, but, man, once it's gone, what a world of difference.
You know why it hurts when you do stuff like that?
I know it has to do with tightness in other places. Like for me, it was a lot of over long-term knots and stuff ending up in my back that were being affected by the tightness in my shoulder.
But do you think the pressure should hurt? Or is that a sign or a red flag that something's going on?
Oh, that's definitely a red flag.
Okay. A lot of people think that mobility and foam rolling are painful, and that's not the case at all. The only reason why it hurts, whenever you have a tight muscle and you try to stretch, like when we do couch stretches, people think it hurts. Well, you're trying to stretch that muscle. It's already tight, and it can't really move through its full range of motion, so it's restricted. And then once you tug on it to its full range of motion, it stops and begins to let the nervous system know, hey, I can't stretch anymore. Pain stimulus, stop it. So when you take a lacrosse ball or a foam roller, you apply the pressure. Pressure stretches the muscle just like a stretch would because it pushes inward and forces it to stretch. And when that muscle can't stretch, it causes pain. And it's saying, hey, I can't stretch anymore. Please stop. And it's a red flag that you need to start working on your mobility, your range of motion, and specifically in that area that's painful. People call them trigger points too.
Yeah, that happens to me in RomWOD. You get to a certain point, you get these really long holds, right? In the first 60 seconds, if it's an uncomfortable place, it's borderline painful. But if you're holding it for well over a minute, after about 30 seconds to a minute, you're actually almost like it's this euphoric feeling because your body is kind of opened up beyond that point of pain, that pain threshold, and now it's actually stretching, and it's not fighting against itself. Whatever muscles you're stretching and tendons, everything's now open and everything is receptive to the stretching, and you actually feel good. Like it's almost like a rush of euphoric feeling when you kind of get to that point. And, after a while doing it, it got to the point where I'd wake up in the morning and I just immediately felt good. Like there was no pain anymore. My quads felt good. It would shoot through my legs. My upper body would immediately open up, and I would just I'm awake. I'm here and ready to take on the day. And, I think that's kind of that whole seated position culture that we live in. We're just tight. I mean, for hours and hours on end, we just sit.
I would say that we're more than just tight. We're adapted. We're adapted to the things that we do every day. We work out for probably, an hour, maybe an hour and 30 minutes for a lot of other people in the gym. But what are you doing the other 23, 22 and a half hours? You're probably sitting on the couch watching TV, relaxing, sitting at your dinner table, eating your dinner with your family, or on the couch sometimes. We eat dinner on the couch sometimes. You're sitting in your car, commuting. You're sitting at your desk, and you're sitting not only just in a bad way or a good way, but you're sitting one way for long periods of time. And the one thing your body is really good at, and that's adaptation. If you go from, I know for me, for example, it took me a little bit to adapt to this Central Valley heat in the summertime, coming from a super humid climate like Kentucky, where I was used to really cold weathers and then really hot and humid temperatures. And then coming here, and I walked outside, and the sun literally burned my skin. And it took a little bit of time to adapt because I'm pasty white. I had to get that little tan. See that? Whoa. That little bit right there, a little bit of melanin right there.
Slight layer of protection.
Zoom in on that.
There.
Zoom in. White, brown, white, brown. Slightly brown.
I was gonna say that's more of like a slightly uncooked pancake brown.
But anyway, yeah, that's a perfect pancake. You're crazy. Anyway, that's an adaptation, and the same thing can be said with how you move, how you sit, how you stand. You have habits. Those are called adaptations, and you accumulate those adaptations, and then all of a sudden, 1 hour or 30 minutes out of your day, you're trying to do something completely different throughout your day, whether it's snatch. Who puts their hands over their head regularly? Who puts their hands over their head and holds something over there? Other than obviously the people that are athletic that do this for a living, like CrossFit athletes or Olympic weightlifters. But who? Name one.
Really short people that do a lot of filing.
Maybe. I'll give you that one, but that's probably about it. Other than that, most people do things in front of them. They're using their keyboard. They're making coffee. They work at baristas or wherever they do. They're typing. They're putting things away, picking things up off the ground. They're never doing something over their head, and then all of a sudden they want to snatch 300 pounds. It's not going to happen. You gotta adapt to those positions. You got to prepare those positions, and that's why we do things like stretching before we warm up. The whole purpose of stretching before you warm up is to gain greater range of motion, to improve your range of motion, prime that joint to not only maybe this is all you got, but now you got this. Now let's do the warm up and prime that movement, that newfound range of motion, so that you can be ready to hold a barbell over your head. So it's really bad to stretch and then get into a heavy lift. You need to stretch, prime the position, and then warm it up and get it ready to hold something overhead, or jerk 300 pounds over your head, or do 50 handstand push-ups or handstand walks. It's really important, especially when we're talking about shoulders. People complain about, I carry my stress in my shoulders. No. You sit here and you shrug like this all day, and you reach out in front of you, and your levator and your neck muscles are over-adapted to your common positions and shapes, and that you're not doing anything about it to release them, relax them, or strengthen them and put them back into position. People talk about good posture. Well, what's good posture? If you're doing this all day, you're going to adapt into more than likely raising your shoulders up or being really tight in the back of your shoulders, and that doesn't benefit anybody. If you're trying to do something the opposite direction, like do dips, you're always going to be really stiff and tight. So it's not one way is a good way. You need to move in all ways, all different types of ranges of motion or vectors, as the health and science community is aware of. You got to move this way. You got to move this way. You got to move this way. There's all different types of shapes and positions, and we're used to using maybe one or two. And you adapt, and over time you get worse, and then people blame it on age. There's nothing to do with age. You're just accumulating, literally accumulating, like sitting here right now. It's okay to sit. There's nothing wrong with sitting. Sitting for 10 to 15 hours a day, there's something incredibly wrong with sitting for that long a time. Same with standing. People are like, I got a standing desk. Yeah, but you stand incorrectly, and you stand with the arch back, or you pop your leg to the side, or you twist your foot over. Those things add up too. You're a system of systems, and your systems have to work together with one another. You can't just use one system throughout your whole day.
Yeah, I got a great example of that. Being in a military high school for 5 years, 8th grade through senior year. No, I didn't get held back for all you jerks out there thinking, no, I was there in 8th grade. Bad kid. Moving on. You know, we had to stand with your heels together and your toes pointed out. Right? So I'm standing in a position where my toes are pointed out all the time. And you're marching, you're standing this way for hours at times, depending on the day and the parades and what have you.
And the cadre.
So, years go by. Now I find myself that I walk that way too. I walk with my toes sometimes pointed out if I get really lazy. And Coach Lizzie drives her nuts. So every day now she yells at me, "Fix your feet," because I lock my knees and I point my toes out. Those are both horrible things to do. Horrible, but because it's been ingrained in me now since I was 13, so 21 years, it's extremely difficult for me to not think about. But when she cues me, I immediately fix it. I'm like, oh, it's so much more comfortable.
Yep, and that's a great example of adaptation over time for accumulation. And if you think about the jobs, if you're thinking about systems here, give examples, your ankles, they move, they bend, they twist, they pivot. But whenever you have your toes pointed to the side, you've pretty much locked them into place. And now what's going to happen? The next system up, your knees, which only do one thing, and that's hinge back and forth. Now they're twisting and hinging. And that's why you get issues with meniscus tears or slight abrasions or whatever comes from knee pain or what are people calling it nowadays? The itises. People call, I got knee-itis in my knee. It's normal. I'm old, it's typical. No, it's not. It's adaptation.
Yeah, I mean,
wear and tear.
I spent a lot of years working retail in out of high school, and my knees were always a problem. My ankles, my calves, my back.
I bet you have a hard time squatting too, if I could just guess.
I did, yeah. When I first came in, I couldn't squat to a box. I couldn't squat to a 24-inch box.
Wow.
Obviously a lot of that's fixed now, but now it's just more of my general standing position is toes pointed forward, knees slightly bent. That is a natural position. That is a natural standing position that is extremely uncomfortable and very difficult for me to get to without somebody cueing me because it just doesn't feel right after so many years of doing it the wrong way.
Let's just think about it. Everything we walk on today is flat and perfect, generally. If you think about how we evolved over thousands of millennia, our feet, we walk back and forth across all the continents, all the uneven surfaces. Your ankles moved in all different directions, and now they don't at all move in any type of direction. There's one really cool standing platform, has different shapes. So, like, if you have foot pain, this is a really great way to relieve your foot pain. Get one of those little, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it's got like a round point. It's got a high point. It's got a tilted point. It's got a tilted back point. So you can change the angle that your foot in, so you're moving your ankle, which moves in all different vectors or ranges of motion, instead of it just being flat all the time. Because, again, your body is a sensor. It will adapt. It will overcome. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about how many people I diagnose here at the gym with ankle mobility issues. Their flexion going forward is god-awful. They're putting so much pressure on their knees because they can't flex their ankles forward enough.
And now load that position with weight.
So if you're sitting here and this is my knuckles, my knee here, they're getting to here, and then it's all pressure on the knees, and they're just sitting on those knees where those knees should be able to sit forward way farther and allow those hips to clear.
Yep.
And, I'm like, you got to stretch your ankles. Well, how do I do that? I'm going to show them a couple of easy stretches. Kick your foot up on a wall, just lean forward, things along those lines. But, for so many people, they don't have that ankle mobility, and that's...
A lot of people don't. That's probably more common than shoulders.
How many people squat in their fitness routine with shitty ankle mobility and then end up destroying their knees and turn around and blame it on squatting?
A majority of people, I'd say.
Yeah. Doctors included.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. Doctors don't know everything. It's
terrible for your knees. No, fix your ankles.
Mm-hmm. I'm talking about general doctors.
Yeah.
You need to, if you really want to figure out what's going on, you need to talk to a specialist like Dr. Roop, physical therapist, Dr. Starrett, physical therapist. I can't think of any locally off the top of my head. I know one chiropractor tore his pec, and if you have injuries like that, I don't really have much respect for you as a professional, because your job is to understand not only position but mechanics under load and how to restore or gain proper function and functionality out of your muscles or out of your system of systems, right? Your whole body, moving it.
Well, I mean, a torn pec, that really depends on what you were doing. If you're loading your bench and you're going for a PR, I don't care how mobile you are, 400-pound bench press, if you just get out of position barely, you could tear a pec. So,
right.
I mean, because I've seen guys like Mark Bell tear pecs all the time, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're absolute professional weightlifters. And
but if you looked at that lift that he did tear his pec, he came out of position.
But if they just barely, just something goes off, right? Like they just barely move their elbow, and that's the end of their pec as we know it.
Yep.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. As a professional, we should be treating our bodies the best, and really focusing on that. I'm really guilty of getting out of the habit of RomWOD, doing the mobility WOD stuff. But I mean, I try to preach it to other people. But yeah, we should be the leaders in that. We should be the ones doing it every day. We should be the ones to be able to show proper form. Be able to squat properly and show what ankle flexion looks like, and show what proper hip clearance is, and show different things along those lines, and stand properly and have good posture. And my biggest pet peeve is when people deadlift and they just are slouched with their shoulders forward, and I have to constantly tell them, pinch your shoulder blades. Mm-hmm. Because they're just putting all this pressure on their shoulders, and their back is getting dragged down with it. And if all they do is pinch their shoulder blades, now they're in a better position, and they got that nice proper S curve in their back. Mm-hmm. And they're using all this power of that entire posterior chain rather than...
Yeah, maintain the natural curvature of the spine is really important, especially when you're working with heavy loads, big weights, and often or frequent. You need to really focus on your position, because if you're not focusing on your position, you're going to get extremely sore, and eventually you're going to accumulate injuries, tears, micro tears, and those are going to develop and build. And especially if you're sitting in a car all day with your hand forward, shoulder rolled forward, and then you're trying to do things like snatch 100 pounds over your head, something bad's going to happen because you're accumulating. Something's going to give. It's not that one thing that did it, that one movement, that one day that did it. It was the accumulation of years, months of just bad position and improper technique. That's why you see a lot of bicep tears or tricep tears in the bodybuilding world. I'm not talking about professionally, but in the Globo gym scene, a lot of those guys get shoulder injuries because they bench press every Monday. They bench press incorrectly, and they don't. Look at Mark Bell. He's a professional. He pushes his limits, but he knows how to get there. Yep. These guys are just, I'm going to go 10 pounds heavier this week. I'm going to go 10 pounds heavier every single week, and that is not the correct way to get stronger and faster.
No, it's looking at the Wendler progressions. With Wendler, it's a progression. It's a linear progression up, deload.
Yep.
Linear progression up, deload. Linear progression. So you're doing
Wendler's
this every 4 to 5 weeks, but you're constantly starting a little higher.
Upward.
So over time, you're making those incremental gains all the way up the ladder, but you're also giving your body a chance to recover. And during that deload week is a great time to really look at your technique and improve your technique so you're ready for a heavier top set week in the end.
Mm-hmm. And that's even what the strongest people in the world are doing, not the Wendler specifically, but some sort of form of fashion where they're loading themselves heavy one day, one lift a week, whether it's bench press 1 week, and then another day of bench press where it's focused on lightweight, speed work, and really focused on technique, but being very fast and explosive. And the next week might be squats. And the next week might be another or a pull. The next week might be another press. They're not maxing out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the lifts. They're very strategic with how they do it, although they're always maxing out something. And those guys are professionals. They started doing something basic like Wendler, or Wendler method, 5-3-1 method, whatever you want to call it. But you don't need to look at what these guys are doing right now. You need to look at what they did 5-10 years ago, and that's where you need to start and build your way up, whether it was mobility, flexibility, strength, or some sort of structure in your strength program. That's how you avoid injury, and that's how you continue getting strong over a long period of time. Because you shouldn't get hurt in your training. You should get hurt in competition, if anything. If you're going to get hurt anywhere, it's pushing your maximum, pushing your limits, hitting that line, and pushing through that barrier. If you're getting hurt in training, you are doing something absolutely wrong.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big that's a commonality in football. Mm-hmm. Most of the injuries that happen in the preseason are freak accidents, but what else is part of that? It's training camp. And these guys that are getting hurt are generally guys that weren't training and stretching and properly building their body up to be prepared for the season.
They weren't ready for it.
They're trying to come into the season 0 to 60 in the first week. rather than having kept up that momentum during the off season. Or on the opposite end, you hear about guys that trained out of control all off season, came into the preseason and are trying to keep up that same level without ever giving their body a rest, without ever taking time to actually take care of their body.
Yeah, changing the frequency.
Right, and without ever doing a tune-up, going to see a chiropractor, doing all these tune-up things your body needs to recover, like you would need to recover any type of machine, and they're getting hurt.
Yep,
it's costing them a season. It's costing them their career.
That's right. Well, I guess let's finish up with talking about recovery. You made a good timing with that. We talked about a lot about preparation. Not one way is the right way. You need to do all different types of things. Stay ready. I guess CrossFit's a good example. Constantly ready for the unknowable. And you don't know what the knowable is, whether you're going to have a shoulder injury or you're going to have a hip injury or you're going to have to go to surgery. You're going to need to be ready for it and always ready for something that's going to pop out at you, whether it's a tiger or if it's your desk. That's going to hurt you. Got to be ready for one or the other. So recovery is really important because Kelly Starr has a great analogy. The car analogy is one of my favorites. You have this $1 million Ferrari, and you just drove the piss out of it on the track for multiple hours, and it's red hot. Are you going to just put that thing in the garage red hot? Probably not. It's probably not going to last very long. And his analogy was your body is that Ferrari. You need to take care of it. You need to make sure that you're doing the maintenance. You cool it down, right? Michael Phelps works out 3 times. He's, again, a professional athlete. Warms up and cools down 3 times as long as he does than his workout is, because that's the most important for him. His workouts get him better, but his warm-up prepares him for the workout that's going to be very intense, and his cool down prepares his body to recover and repair from that intense warm-up. The same can be said, again, with another car analogy. It's not preparing your body, getting ready in the warm-up is like putting the handbrake on and then driving that Ferrari around. What's going to happen? Something's going to burn out and blow up, or something's going to give, and one of those systems are going to fall apart, and that car's not going to be able to run without brakes. You're just going to run right into a wall doing 1,000,000 miles an hour. And that same analogy can be said for a shoulder injury. Preparation, work, recovery. And when we're talking about recovery, a lot of people do nothing. They get out of this gym red hot, beat with sweat, and they just walk and get in their car and sit down and go about their regular day with shoulders rounded forward, shoulders in the forward of the socket, and they wonder why they have shoulder impingement or pain in their shoulder when they do dips or push-ups, or they have pinching sensations in their hips because they sit down for so long. You got to cool your body down, whether that's on the Aerodyne or if it's 10 to 15 minutes of some sort of mobility with Mobility WOD or RomWOD, something to get the body out of that sympathetic nervous system back to that parasympathetic nervous system, because that's what your body knows. It knows 2 things: fight and flight, rest and digest.
Yep. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I would add to it. Is I did RomWOD for 2 months. I was doing barbell WOD. I was seeing progress, but my squat really wasn't going up to save my life. I started doing RomWOD. 2 months later, my squat was up 50 pounds.
Yeah,
that is not exaggeration. 50 pounds. I went from a 250-pound back squat to 300 pounds in 2 months of doing RomWOD and continuing my linear progressions with barbell WOD.
And I think you can solely put those results on improving position.
Right.
If you can improve your position
in the back squat.
Yeah. You think about it, your body makes certain shapes. If you can get into a really good position, you can snatch and overhead squat a lot of weight. You're going to get to this point where eventually you're going to get stronger and hit a plateau, because you're not improving your position. If the position, it comes all down to position with squats. If you're forward leaning in your squat, guess what? That barbell is going to keep pushing you. It's going to keep pushing you forward. You're not going to be able to resist and get it up out of the bottom of your squat. So working on hip mobility or ankle mobility, something to improve your position so that you can maintain that position under a maximal load. That's how you get stronger. Not just doing more heavy weights every single week, but improving your position, improving your range of motion, improving your mechanics in a specific lift, whatever it is, bench press all the way to overhead squat. That is how you get stronger. And that's what happened with my snatch. I didn't really push. When I first got into this, I couldn't do a front rack. This was my front rack, just kind of holding a bar here, floating over my shoulder. I see it so much. And I had to be adamant every single day, whether I was doing front squats or we were just doing something like Murph that has nothing to do with the barbell. I'll always make sure I prioritize my weaknesses after my workout. 10 minutes working on front rack and rotation in my shoulder, because without those 2 things, I was really strong, but that puts me more susceptible to injury because I'm limited in how much my shoulder can move even though I can force myself in those positions. And that's not such a great idea to do.
Yeah, I spent about 10 minutes before every class when I first started in a front rack, banded front rack.
Yeah, that's a good
banded
one.
shoulder stretch.
I think we had
couldn't get a
videos of
front
that.
rack, and I just made it my decision I was going to get a front rack because it hurt so bad that I was literally the worst CrossFit candidate you would ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't squat, couldn't get a front rack, couldn't put a barbell over my head, literally couldn't put a PVC pipe over my head, couldn't run, couldn't jump, pretty much couldn't do anything athletic at that point. I've lost like 70 pounds. I can squat. I can do things even when I'm not on top of my mobility. I still have more range of motion than the average American.
Yep.
And that is all due to CrossFit and focusing on my mobility. Yeah, your body will use it or lose it if you're not doing your range of motion stuff every day. You're stretching. But if you get your body to a point of homeostasis, it doesn't necessarily have to be every day, but it's something we highly recommend you do at least for a few minutes.
If you're coming from nowhere and you can't move at all and you're suffering from joint pain or muscle pain, you have to do more than your workout. You have to, or it'll never get better.
Right.
You're just forcing yourself to make these shapes, and eventually you're going to push yourself to an injury.
Yep.
And there's no way around it other than working on your position, working on your weaknesses. As much as it sucks, it's cool to do things you're good at, but sometimes you got to do something you suck at too.
Yep.
And that's just the way life is.
And it could be, you know what, for me, I found RomWOD was enjoyable. So that's why I keep saying it. RomWOD for me was actually enjoyable. It has a lot of 15, 20-minute sessions. It's kind of a nice, like, relaxation period, too. I can kind of get my head right. If you're the type of person that needs that, like, quiet time, RomWOD's awesome. Mobility WOD's awesome, too. If you want to start learning how to use a foam roller properly, learning how to use a peanut, learning how to really use a lacrosse ball to attack positions. The gentleman to my right here, Mobility Matters on YouTube and Instagram, awesome, helpful tool as well. You know, you've got an amazing mobility specialist right here in the gym, so don't forget to use that as well.
Yeah, ask me questions. And if you like to know the why of why you use a lacrosse ball here and there, I know RomWOD's great for people that don't really care. They just want to get better at something. That's great. They're nice. They have pretty nice soft music in the background. You can relax to. But Dr. Kelly Starrett explains the why you want to do it, what it's going to do for you, and how it's going to improve, especially with you need some sort of instruction or structure to your program. He'll explain every single bit of it as long as you can keep up with how fast he talks. And that's why I like Dr. Kelly Starrett, because he really explains it in depth, tells me the who, what, why, where, when, where, how, and just gives me nitty-gritty why I should do this, what it's going to do for me, and he has a whole lot of examples. And his YouTube channel is free as well. He has quadruple 1,000, if that's even a word, more videos than I do, and that's pretty much where I learned everything that I know. I'm just regurgitating things he says, and I dumb it down for the average individual because he speaks on a very high intellectual level, and he says a lot of big words that sometimes I don't understand, but I break it down a little bit simpler, a little bit easier. I don't use the big words, or I say hips instead of glutes. Sometimes that makes a lot of people mad because they're like, oh, that's not my hips. I'm like, I know. I'm just speaking generally. In layman's terms, that's the word I'm looking for. I make it layman.
Yeah. No, he is pretty lame. So.
Right?
Yeah. It's, I
snatch more,
in all
though.
honesty, it's awesome. It's, mobility does help. It will change. It could potentially change your life the way it changed mine. So I passionately throw a plea out there for you guys to take this. Obviously, don't make it your whole life, but take it seriously enough to come in 5-10 minutes early. Ask your coaches questions. Ask us questions. Find that thing that impassions you to get better. RomWOD helped me, but so did Mobility WOD. They both changed my life for the better in some way, shape, or form. So they're both awesome tools. They're both very inexpensive tools to use.
I think both of them cost less than $10 a month.
Yeah, I think RomWOD's like $14.99 now because they
God.
they're a game sponsor. But
Mobility WOD costs $7.
yeah, it's either way for $25 a month or less. You guys can get access to all the information you need, all the stretching, video technique you need. Mobility Matters is absolutely free. We're here to help. Whatever you guys need, let's get to work.
Yeah. And it's up to you to get to the work. It's not going to happen in class. It's not going to happen overnight. Just like you didn't learn how to overhead squat 200, 300 pounds or snatch 300 pounds overnight. It was an accumulation of years and years and years of work and practice, hard work and determination. And the same thing needs to be said about your mobility. If you want to be 60 and do things like Rambo Ronnie does, climbing ropes, snatching heavy weights, doing RX workouts, you need to really emphasize your health, your body, and start taking care of it.
Yep. Everyone that's successful in this gym took what we do in class and then added a little bit of something else on top of it to hit their goals, whatever that goal is. So they either focused on their Olympic weightlifting and spent a lot of time on their technique and mobility. They focused on gymnastics and spent a lot of time on their techniques to get that muscle up or to get, so there's a little bit more behind the scenes than what you see in class. These people are not just magically one day waking up, grabbing some rings and hitting a ring muscle up.
No.
There's a lot of behind the scenes work they're doing in open gym, personal training. They're grabbing coaches that are really good at explaining the stuff, that work well with each other, and getting that help. They're spending a lot of time at home doing RomWOD and mobility WOD, or spending time here grabbing foam rollers. So there's so much more that goes into it. If you have those type of goals, talk to us. We can help you with goal setting. We can help you figure out what path you need to take and the things you need to improve on to get to those goals. So
yeah, even just giving you a little tip in class. Hey, you need to work on your wrist rotation. Here's a video. Do it every day.
All you got to do is follow through with it. It's that simple.
And it's not even a lifetime thing. If it's one problem that you have, just working on that thing for 1 to 2 months, boom, it's gone. It's fixed.
Yeah.
Now you can just do maintenance, like an oil change once every, 5,000 miles?
Yep.
It's not an everyday thing anymore. You accomplished it. So I think we beat that dead horse.
We done beat it.
And kept beating it. That's what we say in Kentucky.
We're signing off now.
See you guys.
Peace.